Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about the DOJ Statement of Interest. This is all in regards to the real estate settlement. We didn't know if the DOJ would actually make a statement, but they did just yesterday. And so tonight we're going to talk about that Statement of Interest, what they said about the settlement, about the NAR settlement, and kind of figure out how does that impact us. And Candace is going to share at the end of this webinar, kind of what she's doing with one of her clients, which I think will give some actual, boots on the ground, tactical information so that you can make some good decisions when you're working with clients on when do you actually put that buyer service agreement. And I don't care if you're working Washington, Oregon, or Idaho, when do you give that to them? And when do you actually have that dialogue? So hopefully tonight you'll get a few good tips that you can take away. Let's go to the next slide. So the DOJ filed this just yesterday. So this is hot off the press. This is the United States District Court. Judge Boo is the judge that's handling this case, and everybody's watching this case across the entire nation. So the National Association of Realtors was sued, and if you didn't know that, you probably haven't been around for a long time, or maybe you just got your license. But this was filed, and Judge Boo is going to rule on this. And they may take into consideration the DOJ, or they may not. We're going to find out here in the next couple days. So a couple highlights. This is the statement of interest. I had Shannon go ahead and highlight the key points. So I'm just going to read the key points because I think it makes a lot of sense given what we know about the NAR lawsuit. So the United States takes no position on whether the proposed settlement satisfies Rule 23E apart from one concern. So they had really one concern to be considered, and it's all about the written agreement before the buyer tours any home. So you see that right there in this docket 1458. This provision itself raises independent concerns under the antitrust laws, which could be addressed in multiple ways. The parties could eliminate the provision or disclaim the settlement that creates the immunity or defense under the antitrust laws. I hope that the judge will go ahead and just throw that part out. We'll take the DOJ and actually say, you know what, this is kind of stupid. The way that the provision raises where you actually have to give the buyer, you have to have an agreement before you actually show a property. I thought that was poorly worded in the settlement anyways, but the provision would require buyers and brokers to make a written agreement before home tours. And they say that this will harm brokers and it harms clients. And so that's what the DOJ is kind of claiming. And so what we're going to see is over the next couple of days, how this rules, whether they go ahead and approve the settlement as written or if they make some adjustments to it. Let's go to the next slide. That's the highlights. So I wanted to highlight, because you got the federal thing that's going on right now, and everybody's looking at the federal, but the state governments have all instituted these disclosures. Each state of Washington, state of Idaho, and the state of Oregon, where we all service our clients, have all put these pamphlets together. And these pamphlets have been revised, and they're not going to go away. The state governments, we're still going to have to comply with the state regulations. So just because the federal government's going to do what they're going to do with NAR, that has nothing to do with how we conduct business in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. So I want you guys to still continue to use the pamphlets. When I talk to my friends out here in Idaho, I'm out here in Idaho tonight, they said that the most common issue they're having with the settlement is because there's a settlement and lawsuits and all this going on, their brokers, or they call them salespeople here in the state of Idaho, they're forgetting to give the blue brochure. And that's what Shannon has on the screen, is that blue brochure must be given. So just like we do in Washington, the pamphlet must be delivered. We also need to deliver the blue book. And we should do this as soon as possible when we start to work with our clients, because this gives the client education about how to conduct real estate purchases and sales in the states that we service. So do not go away from doing the pamphlets. That's the most important takeaway from tonight. Whatever happens with the federal government, continue to practice with giving the disclosures and the pamphlets that you have been doing in the past. Let's go to the next one. Oregon also has theirs, which is right here, OREF. And they also, if you could zoom in a little bit, I don't know if you can, Shannon, but it talks about when you give this pamphlet. And they said in Oregon that you need to give this pamphlet before you write a purchase and sale agreement. So essentially, you should be operating that way with Oregon, Idaho, and Washington. We should be giving these pamphlets before we start to put pen to paper. Where should we do the consultation? Well, we discussed this many, many years ago. Candace, want to just open up your mic? You could talk, right?
Yep, I
So,
sure can. Can you hear me okay?
yep, I can hear you just fine. So where do you do most of your consultations? I mean, you've
I
been doing
mean,
consultations for a while.
I'm looking at the list here and I've done them multiple ways. I have done phone consultation, not so much an email consultation. I'm one of those people where I've got to feel some kind of body language, see you. So make sure that you're understanding what I'm saying. So I wouldn't say I've done an email consultation, but in person and Zoom, those are like my tried and true go-tos. And in the past, it would be at the first showing, it's pre-approval, get the pre-approval, consult with their lender. And then when we get to that first house, that first showing, I might do a consult there as well, just kind of going over things, asking questions. Um, I know that some people are doing it before the offer submitted. Um, there's many ways to do a consult. I would just say beware of doing a consult maybe on text or just email.
Mhm.
Um, just to make sure that they understand
Well,
completely.
Candace is working with all of our top producers. She runs our sales, she's our sales manager for Best Choice Realty. So while I'm out hunting for more agents or working on issues, Candace is working with our top producers. So she gets the chance to meet and talk with all of the people that are producing at probably what most of us want to produce at. Our top producer at Best Choice Realty is going to produce upwards of at least 4 or 5 sales per month at a minimum. And so to do that type of volume, there's got to be a process in which we conduct business. And a consultation is what I have seen and what Candace has seen is a common theme around top producers. How are they able to do that much business? They have a system, they know what they're going to say on the consultation, they have their materials ready to go for that first meeting, and then they can either do it on Zoom, but they usually have to kind of be flexible. Each client is unique, and I think that's what the DOJ is saying as well with their statement of interest, is that no client is all alike, and we have to be able to be flexible and give those clients a choice and walk them through the process and put their not worry about the settlement so much. I mean, they're not going to be able to enforce it, is I think what they're really saying. And let's figure out when would be the best time to put pen to paper or actually write that service agreement. And maybe it isn't at the first house. Maybe it isn't at the first meeting. Maybe it is on Zoom, or maybe it's when you're writing a contract. But that should be a choice that is done between the parties, between you and your client. And I like what the DOJ is saying. I think that's a smart way to go. And I wish the settlement was written better, but we're starting to see, some conflict, and I think it's good conflict. Let's go to the next slide. So the cookie cutters, Shannon, do you want to share what this one is? This is, I think, yours.
Yeah, so this is one of mine, I suppose, and I'd say this is a cookie cutter situation. This is what the DOJ and the National Association of Realtors in Washington State and all the people, all the players, this is what they want. Is they want this nice little cookie cutter situation where every buyer goes through the same path. But the reality is it doesn't always go that way. But this is good for reference. So we understand when people say you must have a console or you must have a service agreement. This is kind of what the consumer is thinking in their head, of what they're expecting in terms of a consultation. So this was a first-time home buyer, friend of mine, first generation home buyer, the works. So I had sat down with them to discuss, what are their options? What are they going to be doing? After I had set that appointment, it's all about how I introduced the service agreement at that point in time, because services have not really been rendered yet. I've not shown a house. I've not offered on a property for them. I've just been consulting, giving them advice, I suppose. And so for them, this was the follow-up email that kind of postured up that service agreement so that it was actually really easy to get it signed afterwards. So this one says, thank you for the help. This is right after I'd met with them. I said, great, let me confirm the appointments for the showings. And I said, I'll plan to meet you at the 171st house at 2 p.m. I'll send you the service contract, same as the one I went over at your house, to sign before then so I can work on your behalf. I'll see you tomorrow. And they said, thank you. And what I can tell you is they signed right away. And it's certainly before they met me at that house at 2 p.m. Because the expectation was before they show the house, they have to sign a service agreement in order to show. So obviously, cookie cutter situation, they all are not always going to be like this. If you've got a Zillow lead or an online internet lead, they want to go see the house, you're meeting them at the house, you don't know them. It doesn't always fall into this, same little box situation. So I think Candace had a situation.
We're going to go over that here in a minute, but I
Yeah.
like the text message. I like some of you look for, how do I text somebody? How do I introduce it? I like what Shannon did here in a simple text. It is setting the expectations, and I thought that was really appropriate to share. And I think it would be compliant. Do we have to go to this type of level of setting expectations? No. I think, we're not part of the settlement at Best Choice. And so we can introduce that buyer service agreement when we do commence real estate services. And that can be determined, based on the client's needs. Let's go to the next slide. Candace, you want to share your story? Because it was not a cookie cutter. It's a doctor, I
This is
think.
not a cookie cutter. Yeah, she's a physician. And we actually met a couple years back in a home buyers class that I taught. She reached out to me. So most of you guys know, I do work pretty closely with referrals. But every now and again, I will get a lead from a class that I've taught, maybe an open house, something different than my normal. And so basically, she was ready to start interested in looking in homes in Tacoma. And basically what I wanted to do right away is, you know what? Let's get the consultation. How can we meet? Are we going to meet in person or on Zoom? Whichever you prefer. I want to make sure that I'm available, make it comfortable, easy to do, but I want them to come to me. Like, set this time aside and let's talk about this. I don't want to just go out showing you homes, right? So let me know your availability. And she let me know she'll be in Tacoma. Come to find out over time, she lives in Linwood, is looking for a job down south in the Tacoma area. And so we figured that out. So we had our consultation. We talked, we discussed, and we went over. She looked at her numbers, it's like get with the lender. So when we had our consult, we've gone over the numbers. We're talking about, consulting with her lender, understanding payment amount, and then I'm going over the disclosures, right? Also discussing the buyers.
So let me stop you real quick,
Representation agreement.
Candace.
Yeah.
Stop you. So what you're saying to me is like the top of this slide, from the top to the middle, you're just emailing her, right? You're starting, and you're
We're
not,
emailing.
at no point do you say you have to send the buyer service agreement. You can't.
Oh, no.
Yeah, in
And I'm
fact,
gonna send the buyer service agreement until we have the discussion. So when January 1 came around, and for me, it did change things, and I've talked to plenty of us, sometimes, I'd put the buyer service agreement in, but on the majority of times, I didn't. I literally taught that,
build a
you
reputation, build a
yeah,
relationship.
in the relationship. So I taught that, why wouldn't you want to meet with me, work with me, and the seller pays for my compensation. So I used to teach that in the classes. So the buyer's consult wasn't a big thing, but I knew, when things change, I don't want to take the risk of losing it. I don't want to losing the client, and I definitely don't want to take the risk of not getting paid. So it's like that consultation, that is like my first thing. Let's meet, let's have it, let's make sure that everything works. So
That was started in May is the start, and then you kind of worked your way through, and then she was
right.
looking at, then you started talking about pricing with the lender, and then we're
Mhm.
starting to now talk about the buyer agency agreement, right?
Right. And so at this point, I think, I don't know, it's maybe on the last slide, but we've discussed it. So we had our consult, we've discussed it. And then her question was, is there a version of the buyer's agreement with everything filled out for me to review? So initially I sent her a copy of it just to kind of review. Then she wants me to fill it out and send it to her, not necessarily through AuthentiSign, but send it out. And I did. And after talking and discussing, it really helped us dial in how ready was she. That was May. You guys, she's like probably not ready until January, January to actually start.
2025.
So, you know, I would have had to sign one and set up another, you know, extension on the buyer's consultation. But it was good because it brought her to the place where she knows 100% that if she is going to need to sign that before we're out searching for homes. Let me see here. And then this also came up. She had paused the home search as well because she wasn't sure on the job opportunity. She was looking at jobs, and then there was one she was going to take out of state. She then has made her way back, accepted a position in Tacoma, and she'll start January 27th. So kind of now it's almost like we're going back over the consult again, just because there's been so much time in between. Few other changes that have happened with our forms and so forth in August as well. So yeah.
I think
good, that's
I think
fine.
it's interesting, you know, hearing Candace's situation where it's refreshing to see that the Department of Justice understands that they're not always cookie cutter. It's like
Right.
sometimes these buyers, they take a long time, more so than sellers will. Sometimes sellers, they're just ready to go. They kind of already in their mind know that they're preparing their home for the market. But for a buyer, sometimes it takes over a year to get some of these people
Right.
pre-approved or to work on their credit or, you know, these situations. And if you have a service agreement by the first time you talk to them, I mean, it's going to be expired sometimes before you even start showing homes. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And plenty of
Yeah.
agents have come to me and said, Candace, I'm just not comfortable forcing somebody to sign this agreement with me. And we're just, you know, we're dating. Not even at that place. We don't have that full connection. So I know plenty have said to me, you know, this is a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, but having said that though, you guys, we're not gonna see our state government in any of the 3 states that we operate in say that, well, we're not doing buyer service agreements anymore. They're still here to stay. So let's not forget that. We still are going to need those in order for us to pay any kind of any kind of buyer compensation in any of the 3 states. So continue to do them, but I think there's flexibility in when you do them and when you actually have the buyer sign, between when is real estate practical? When is it real estate? When it's practical to have them sign that agreement? So I think we can give you a few good tips that have worked well. Shannon, do you want to share what you've got here as
Yeah,
what
this is
best?
probably one of the top emails that I email out to all of you guys that I get requests for all the time is what do you send out to your clients after you've met with them? You know, what are you sending out? So this is a sample when I was working with again another friend of mine in an area that I'm actually not as used to. This is over in the Spokane area. They were relocating. And so I'll just read it. So for those of you that are driving or whatnot, but it says, as promised, attached is the buying guide I mentioned that can be a resource for you to see how the home buying process works. I'm also attaching disclosures I'm required by state law to provide to clients as a real estate professional. And below are some helpful links to help you get oriented with the area. And I've got a link for school district information, crime statistics, the city that they were interested in, you know, the county websites and whatnot. It says, let me know when you're planning a trip over and we can meet up. My office is in this location. I've already scoped out a restaurant or 2 you would love. Let me know how it goes with the Liberty Lake House this afternoon. They were going to an open house. And basically let's be in touch. So attached, I've got all of the disclosures that they would need to have. And this could go for any state that you're required to. You know, I've got a receipt saying I've sent this to them, a buying guide and the disclosure. What's funny is that this email, I grabbed a screenshot. This is one I sent before January 1, that even in Washington, the service agreement has changed, but the concept still works, you know, in terms of having that follow-up after the fact.
And Candace, you still sent, in fact, the thing you add is you have a sample buyer service agreement right there as an attachment.
Right.
Yeah.
But you don't
Exactly.
require them to sign it. You just introduce it at that point. Is that when you do
Right.
it?
Yes, that's it. It's being fully transparent. I'm all about peel the Band-Aid and let's just let it heal and go with it. So yes, get the disclosures out, get a sample of the buyer service agreement so that they can review. If sometimes though, while on Zoom, you can share screen and, kind of go over specific points that you may want to point out as well. But yep, send out the disclosures, send out the buyer service agreement, set the expectation that they'll be signing it. Um, you know, hopefully at some point before we're out touring homes or they're out at a location touring, going through an
Yep.
open house and get snagged.
Yeah.
Yep, and they will get snagged. There are gonna be brokerages that are still going to lean into it.
Yeah.
So you've got to make sure you have a good relationship. Do you think that you'd fill out the buyer service agreement now that you've worked with this doctor for 9 months? And attach it
Absolutely.
filled out?
Absolutely. Instead of just sending it blank and not
Yeah.
filled. Yeah, absolutely.
You would go ahead and
Yes.
fill it in. Do you worry though, Candace, that maybe they'll shop you? Like that doctor might contact another buyer's agent and see what they're offering? Or do you feel like not worry about that because, you've built such a good trust and relationship with her?
And I think that's my biggest thing too. It's not something I've been concerned about. If I've got you in the consultation, I've got you. And
Mhm.
we're either a match or we're not, kind of right there. You know it. I know it at least. I do know. It's like, are we a match or are we not a match? And so at that point, it is imperative now for me to fill it out, have it there. I'd rather come back and make some changes if needed, or if there was something they wanted to, update or
Yes.
more clarification on, I'd much rather go that route than not have it filled and just send them a blank one. Absolutely.
I'll
Okay.
I'll echo that too for Candace because I did have a buyer at one point. He didn't necessarily shop though, but to your point though, Rochelle, he's savvy. He knows. I mean, people are paying attention to the news. They're seeing stuff about, exclusive, non-exclusive, those types of things. And so he was like, I want to make sure it's only specific to this property. Okay, that's fine. He was someone who called off of a sign. He ended up offering on a different property, so we did have a conversation around that, but because you're upfront about it and things are filled in, having the conversation upfront in a professional way, it actually made it easier down the road when we had to renegotiate that contract.
Okay, cool. And if you do it too early, I mean, worst thing that has to happen is you have to ask for an extension. It's not too
Yeah.
bad.
Right.
So, I mean, if
Right.
you end up going too early and they're signing something, then just watch your dates and we'll make sure that we get an updated one before you actually contract.
Yeah, I think average right now, it depends on the marketplace, but I think right now we're seeing most service contracts are about a year for a buyer. Might be a little bit more for certain situations, might be a little bit less for other situations, but I'd say on average it's usually about 12 months, is what most people are doing.
Oh, interesting. Thank you for sharing, Shannon.
Yeah.
Finding them for a year.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of nice as we go into the new year too. It's like, do you have the plans to be in your home and then your service agreement kind of matches the services you're going to render for the entire year. And it doesn't, I like that philosophy because it doesn't put pressure like you have to find a house I mean, some people obviously have to get into a house in a certain period of time, but if you're just trying to find the best property for your needs, not being locked, I can argue both ways, Shannon, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not cookie cutter, but it is helpful for some of the newer agents where they say, oh, do I do a 1 month agreement? Or, I mean, what's, what's standard? There is no such thing as standard, but what's realistic is most people are doing usually about a year because buyers take longer. It's not a
Yeah.
3 month.
Inventory's not there too. And
Yeah.
sometimes they're having to look at off market or other things and they want to have a rep agreement in
Yeah,
place. Good
for sure.
point. Okay, let's go to the last slide. I think we're almost done. Last slide, we're here to help. So yeah, we're at the end. Questions from all of you. I think we've got about 5-10 minutes. We could answer some questions. I'd love to hear Q&A about any kind of situation you're running into about a buyer agency agreement or a buyer service agreement or anything of that matter. More of the sales part. If we can open the mics, that would be great. Was this helpful? I gotta pick on people, Shannon. That's what.
Everybody's so quiet.
Mimi, you're on. Are you having any problems getting buyer service agreement signed with your business? I mean, you're a good listing agent.
Hmm. She said not at all.
Okay, excellent. Good. We've
Yeah.
done enough training, so I feel like you guys have the right stuff. Let me see.
Kelly, how you feeling?
I've never had any issue getting anyone to sign an agreement, and I've been doing them, I think, since I started with Best Choice.
Yep.
This is how I do business, and they just sign it. I mean, sometimes they might want to like review it, or occasionally they might say, "Hey, I don't want to sign 12 months," but honestly, I mean, if you work with them for 3 months, they're going to sign the extension as well. They just
Right.
want you to help them get through the market.
Yeah.
That's good. And it's something that's in all of those terms are negotiable, so it makes it easy. And we've always had a buyer agency agreement. So that's what's awesome about being at Best Choice is Kelly's been here, what was it, 2014, Kelly? I think is when you joined.
It was 2015 because I had that stupid listing.
Oh my gosh.
Gotcha.
Going on 10 years.
Yeah. So here we got somebody who's been here a long time is using it and has used all the different versions. I think we're on what, version 6 or 7.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you for your feedback, Kelly. Appreciate it. Let's pick on a newer broker.
Well, Mary, it looks like you unmuted yourself. Did you have a comment question?
No, it asked me to.
Oh, okay. Then
Let's see, anybody else? Let's pick on somebody here. Candace or Virginia, do you see anybody new to the business?
So for me, I mean, how I teach it is that I usually get them signed at the end of my first showing with them if they're open to. I mean, the thing is I didn't use one before I had to, and I'm attached to being paid, so it was it was guaranteed I was going to use it. So I don't make it a big deal, and I've with anything that I do, it's a negotiation, even when you're like, even if the seller isn't offering a huge compensation, I've managed to get good compensation anyways, and just recently had the buyer pay the other 0.5%, which would make a lot. At first my stomach kind of nodded, but at the end of the day I'm still providing a really amazing service. I mean, gosh, they have cockroaches after closing. Guess who's paying for that? Such a nice.
Oh, shoot.
But
Cockroaches? Oh,
I know.
the pest inspector come out and do all that. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the thing is I think it's about relationships. It'll always be about relationships. And there are people and cultures that don't want to sign them. And I don't make it a big deal until it's time to write an offer. People are going to work with you or they're not. Your job is to create a relationship that matters.
Yep. That's great.
That's my opinion.
Other questions you guys have? I think it's good news that we have the Department of Justice getting involved. I think it's awesome that they've put some statement together because that settlement was very poorly written. We're not part of the settlement, so I can say that, I guess, on the outsider looking in. But I think it's good that we got some sort of discussion around best practices on how we can move forward in the new year with the settlement. And we'll know very quickly in the next couple of days, we'll know how the judge is going to, if they're going to approve the settlement or if it's going to have any adjustments made. So we'll know very quickly. But I thought that was good to spark some discussion.
I heard it was going to be finalized this Wednesday, I believe is what they said when they released the one yesterday. So stay tuned.
Couple more days and then we'll know before Thanksgiving.
I know we get a little turkey surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, well, if there's no questions, we won't keep you. Have a happy Thanksgiving. The office will be closed on Thursday. We are working though the day before Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving. So if you need help, you just reach out. There's our support line and we are available. I am answering the phones after hours too. There are deals. we're having a great November. October was record breaking and November is going to be great. And same thing with December. So keep up the good work, you guys. And we'll talk to you next Monday.